It's time for this week's three-notched weekly preview. JMU, for the first time since 2013, will be playing in the round of 64 in the NCAA Tournament. Last time it was a Big Ten foe they were facing off against the Indiana Hoosiers. This time it's another Big Ten foe, the Wisconsin Badgers. Bennett, we're just going to talk a little bit about this matchup. We talked a little bit about it in the podcast, but we got to do the three-notch weekly preview. It's got to come back after a few weeks off. We got to break down this matchup because, boy, oh boy, the Dukes are going to win by 50.
I like the matchup for the Dukes. Wisconsin, they play a slower tempo. We had some Wisconsin fans debating that fact, but
Okay, real quick, that Wisconsin fan who somehow found our YouTube podcast, the live stream, what was he saying? We don't play slow. Yes, you do. By all metrics. It's literally not an argument.
I guess in their defense, they were slower. Like they've been slower in some previous seasons, so maybe they're going a little faster than they have in the past. But they're pretty deliberate offensively, especially compared to a team like JMU, where you could see them shoot in the first 5 seconds of the shot clock.
Yeah, 100%.
So a little surprising there, but the matchup I think is interesting because Wisconsin, sort of historically, I think has that sort of Virginia type of. When people think of them, they think a little bit of the same style as Virginia, where they're slow and maybe defense leads the way. This year, their offense is a little bit better than their defense, which I think is good news for the Dukes in the sense that JMU's pretty good on both ends. JMU struggled with App State this year, which blocks a lot of shots. The Badgers, they're very big, but they don't have a ton of shot blockers, which I think is a positive for the Dukes. They actually had 10 games this year, Wisconsin did, where they did not block any shots. 5 was the most they blocked in one game. They only did that once. So they're not a bunch of shot blockers. They try to defend without fouling, which I think is good because you've got TJ Bickerstaff, Terrence Edwards, Jalen Carey. They like to go to the rim, and they sort of struggled with maybe going to the rim a little bit too much against an App State team that can block shots. But Wisconsin doesn't really do that.
Yeah, Wisconsin, they rank 357th in the nation in block shots. They average a block shot on just 4.5% of the opponent's offensive possessions. Another place where Wisconsin's defense really struggles is defending the three-point line. They allow a 37% three-point shooting percentage, which ranks 345th in the nation. So JMU this year, the Southern Miss game, the App State games, even some of their closer wins, it was because their three-point shooting wasn't as electric as it kind of needed to be. Coming into the conference season, they were shooting around. I mean, they were probably out shooting what this team was actually capable of. I think they were hovering around like 38% as a team. It drops in conference play a little bit, but when they win, they typically have a good showing from behind the arc. Do you think Wisconsin's figured that out and that number is a little bit more reminiscent of their early season struggles? Or do you think they can get got with a Michael Green getting hot, a Julian Wooden getting hot from behind the arc?
They've had some tough games. Yeah, they sort of had that, I guess, February lull, but they've had some spots where teams have hit threes against them all year. They're solid defensively, Wisconsin is, but they're definitely better on the offensive end. So I don't think JMU should be too scared about what they're able to do offensively. I think one of maybe the bigger issue could be keeping up with Wisconsin's scores because they have so many efficient scores with really good size. Where, and you talked about this on the podcast, if Bickerstaff or Carey get in foul trouble, the Dukes could be in a world of trouble pretty quickly because they don't have a ton of post depth.
Yeah, their depth is all in the guard spot. I mean, at the guard spot, you have Xavier Brown, Michael Green, Bryant Randleman, all very different skill sets, all you could argue be starters and make a positive impact on this team. Julian Wooden, Terrence Edwards, great forward duo. And then at the 5, you got TJ and you got Jalen Carey, and that's it.
It's going to be interesting because if they can avoid foul trouble, JMU, their stats this year in terms of shooting percentages have gotten incredibly impressive, where Brown actually has himself close to 35% from 3 now after he sort of went off against Arkansas State. I think he's at 34.7% against D1 opponents. Michael Green's 35, Wooden's over 40, Friedel close to 40, Edwards is over 35. Randleman doesn't really shoot, but he's somehow shooting over 40% on his very limited 3-point attempts. And then Horton's been really efficient as a scorer too. You got Bickerstaff and Carey, who are great down low. JMU's offense is highly efficient when they don't turn the ball over. If I'm not mistaken, I think Wisconsin, similarly to Virginia, they're not I wouldn't say they're elite at forcing turnovers.
JMU has 4 players in the top 260 of offensive rating on Ken Palm, which is 260 sounds like a big number, but when you look at each team's playing, 10 guys, that's fantastic. Noah Friedel cracks the top 65. He has a 126 offensive rating. Julian Wooden a 123 offensive rating. Raekwon Horton a 123.2 offensive rating. These guys that aren't necessarily the focal point of the offense are going to need to have these big games to try and take down Wisconsin, because Wisconsin, not to be outdone, they too have 4 guys with an offensive rating above 400.
Yeah, I mean they're super efficient. I think some of that's so interesting is like AJ Store for Wisconsin and Terrence Edwards for JMU aren't in that grouping, but they've still been efficient all year. Jalen Carey for
Well, they're their
JMU is
go-to guys, as Ken Palm labels it.
yeah,
Like those might be why their offensive rating isn't necessarily the highest, because they're just kind of the volume guys for their
right.
teams. But they're the ones you have to worry about, and they're the ones with the worst offensive rating out of like consistent players.
I think it's a great matchup for JMU. I think one of the things they've struggled with at times defensively that I think will be maybe the biggest advantage for Wisconsin is sometimes JMU gets a little bit foul happy defensively, especially early in the season when they're playing some quality teams. They would struggle to defend without fouling. Wisconsin is elite from the free throw line. So if you can defend without fouling, make them earn all their points. Otherwise, it becomes an issue because they have a ton of shooters where if you send them to the free throw line, pretty much all their best players outside of Tyler Wall are shooting, above 70% and really 75% or above from the free throw line.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Another thing that's going to be tough for this JMU team against Wisconsin, JMU thrives in transition. They thrive turning the ball over. A big reason why they're one of the fastest teams in the nation, it's not necessarily because they just run quick half-court sets. It's because when you're looking at an average possession time, it takes into account those turnover, fast break opportunities where you are scoring 3-4 seconds into the shot clock. Wisconsin doesn't turn the ball over. They rank 39th in the nation. They only turn the ball over on 14.6% of their offensive possessions. JMU right there with them. They are 43rd in the nation in turnover percentage offensively, but JMU's defense averages a turnover on 19.8% of defensive possessions. So Wisconsin doesn't typically turn it over, and that means JMU is going to try and have to go to work through offensive half-court sets. And sometimes that turns into a lot of passing around the arc, not trying to go inside, and it leaves into a contested three-point shooter from Friedel or Wooden, who are great shooters, but sometimes these half-court sets, we saw it a lot against App State, leave a little bit to be desired.
Yes, they absolutely do. I think it's an exciting matchup because you can sell yourself pretty easily on both sides. I think especially through the offensive lens, where if you're Wisconsin, you don't turn it over a lot, which sort of negates one of JMU's defensive strengths. If you're JMU, you love to shoot the three and you struggle with getting shots blocked, right? Wisconsin has struggled sort of in both of those areas defensively. Maybe a shootout, although I think JMU is willing to play sort of a slower pace. So it could become that half-court game that you mentioned. I just feel like both teams are going to be super efficient offensively in this one.
It's going to be a blast. JMU right now, a 5.5-point underdog on Bet Online and other sports books across the nation. They're kind of hovering around that. I think it got as low as 4.5. It opened at 5. It's now at around 5.5. Are you betting the Dukes? Take off your JMU hat.
Okay.
Put on your betting hat. Is this a game that you think Wisconsin can win by a lot? Do you think JMU can keep it close? Like, without your JMU purple and gold glasses on, betting wise, how are you looking at this game?
I'd probably take JMU plus 5.5 at this point, right in that range. I think they can certainly hang in this game. I think they will. I think it'll be competitive. I've seen some JMU fans pretty adamant that they're going to win the game. I don't feel that confident in that. I think the Dukes have a good chance of winning, but so does Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a dangerous team. I think it's a matchup that there are reasons it could favor both sides. I don't know. It's a big one. Wisconsin's played a much tougher schedule, so they've been battle tested. They're not going to be like shell shocked by playing JMU, where I do
Yeah.
think there is a little bit of a challenge there where JMU hasn't played a team of this caliber. I don't know. I don't know if you could even say App State's sort of in the same realm, right? So maybe since the Michigan State game that they played a game against a team like this, it's going to be a huge challenge. to beat them, but it's doable. They haven't played as well since the start of February, so I kind of like them to cover the spread. I think they have a chance of winning, but certainly not like a lock. I've seen some people like, oh, JMU's going to the Sweet 16. Don't feel that confident in that.
Yeah, JMU, this is the closest game per Ken Palm since the Michigan State game. Michigan State finishes the year ranked 18th in Ken Palm. The advanced metrics love the Spartans. That game was also on the road. It was a 79-76 overtime win. Wisconsin currently 17th in Ken Palm. It's a neutral site, so that plays into a little bit. I think JMU, value-wise, I'd go money line because I think if it's close, and see if you can follow my thought process here. I think if it's close, JMU wins.
I think they got a good chance. I think they're going to be, I think they'll be in the game for sure. And Michigan State, it was the first game of the year, but Michigan State ended the year as a pretty good 3-point shooting team. They were 1 of 20 against JMU. Some of that really good defense. Some of that they definitely clanged some open looks. But it's going to be an interesting one because I don't think there's a ton of pressure here on JMU to really do anything. I think they'll play freely, and when they've done that this year, they've looked very impressive.
Yeah. JMU goes into this playing with house money. I think for me, I'm not expecting a win. I'm not going into this like adamant that JMU is going to win this game. I'm going to enjoy every second of it. It's a fantastic draw. It's a winnable draw. Not only that, the next round is also extremely fun, whether it's Duke, whether it's Vermont. That has the possibility of being a really fun game that could lend itself to JMU maybe even pulling out an upset and finding its way to the Sweet 16. You're just playing with house money, though, at this point. Like, if you are expecting that JMU is going to win this game and you're adamant that they're going to win this game, there's a stronger than 50% chance that you are going to be let down.
You could definitely be let down, but hey, that's what makes March so great. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the post guys do. JMU's athletic in the post. They have the ability to move quickly. I wonder if they can test Wisconsin's big men in that way, Stephen Crowell specifically. Although Crowell's going to test them because he can knock down threes, and they haven't played a lot of centers who are 7 feet tall and can knock down threes. It's an exciting matchup on both ends. I think this is one of the games and has a chance to be like the game of the opening first round, I guess. I think it's got a chance to be one of the best matchups there is because there are some clunkers on paper, but this one looks like it's got a chance to be really, really exciting.
Yeah, Friday, 9:40 p.m. Eastern tip. That game may even be later than that, the tip, depending on how the game before it goes, because I think it's the Nebraska game before it, which
it's Duke Vermont
right before it?
Right before it in the same, and then they got to wait, I think.
Okay, so a strong possibility that this game is not tipping until post 10.
It's gonna be a late one.
It's gonna be late. It's gonna be something. Before we get up on out of here, who is your X factor in this game? Who needs to? We know Terrence is going to get his. TJ Bickerstaff, Jalen Carey are going to be fed down low. It was Xavier Brown in the Sun Belt Tournament final. Who's the X factor in this game?
To me, I'm always in the Friedel and Wooden camp, where I think they're way more important than maybe they get credit for. When they play well, JMU is a really dangerous basketball team. When the two of them are not shooting threes, they don't have a whole lot in terms of like prolific 3-point shooting outside of them. Green, possibly. Edwards sometimes can knock them down. It feels like Wooden and Friedel. If you have those guys shooting efficiently from 3, I think JMU can beat almost anyone in the tournament.
My X factor, Michael Green. The Bronx, New York, the Bronx, New York native. He's heading a few boroughs over to Brooklyn down at Barclays. Non-conference games. I know that's been a bit for us this season, but like the statistics bear it out that he's really good in non-conference games. And he's been his best when the lights are the brightest. I like Michael Green to go off in this game. If you get him to go maybe 3 of 5, 3 of 4 from deep, those 9 points. Well, I can't do math. Those 9 points could end up being massive in what I'm expecting to be a close game. Plus his assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah, I do think it'll be a highly competitive game. Both fan bases tend to travel very well. I'm excited. I think it's got a chance to be a great atmosphere. 2 great teams, especially on the offensive end. It could be a really fun one.
I think it might be a JMU favored crowd.
I'm interested to see what it looks like. I think there's going to be a lot of JMU fans there. Wisconsin always shows up in droves. Duke fans,
I think
Vermont
Duke.
fans, whoever gets through, maybe they're rooting for the mid-major too.
That's what I'm saying. I think whoever the stragglers from the other games from the day, that if you bought the session ticket, I think some of the other fans may be leaning JMU in this one. You always see that happen when the games start getting close. If Duke beats that Vermont team, I think the Duke fans may become Duke's fans.
I like that. I think that's possible. I'm excited for this. I think it's going to be it's one of the bigger moments in JMU sports in recent memory.
Yeah. Man,
It's a big
what a time. All right. That's been the Three Notched Weekly Preview. If you haven't already, check out the Valley Collab House in Harrisonburg. Minuteman Mondays, $3 Minuteman pours on Tuesdays. Get half off cases every Friday. Join Three Notched for First Tap Friday. They release a new brew. You can also check them out in Richmond, Charlottesville, Roanoke, Virginia Beach, and their new location in Nelson County. They also make some fantastic bourbon. So check out Three Notched wherever you may be in the great state of Virginia. We'll be back with more content throughout this week. The Dukes will face off against Wisconsin Friday, 9:40 p.m. Eastern tip from Brooklyn.